Now, you were in the UK when they first voted to leave the EU back in 2016. 4 years on, the deal's been done. Is this how you expected it to pan out?
This is how the Brexiteers hoped it would pan out, as distinct from my expectation. I mean, my expectation was that once the British Parliament agreed to proceed with the results of the referendum, and there were some real question marks about that, by the way, because many members of the Parliament wanted to have yet another referendum in the hope of reversing the first one. But once that had all passed, yes, I mean, it's common sense that the EU and the UK would continue free trade in goods, and they have agreed to do that. So I think from the point of view of the Brexiteers, the people who wanted to leave the European Union, this is a very good agreement. They've got pretty much everything they wanted. They've got a return of British sovereignty. They've got free trade in goods. They are now free of all of the EU institutions, including the European Court of Justice. So they'll be very happy with it.
We did see some criticism, even Theresa May making comment about the services industry. What do you make of the deal with the fact that there's still lots of things like that to be sorted out?
Well, the services industry, though, isn't as regulated by the EU as the goods trade is. I mean, the goods trade is fundamental to the what they call the customs union and the single market. The services sector is substantially not regulated by the EU. I think it'd be very complicated to make an agreement in that area. I don't think that's a big problem for the UK. London is, well, debatably the world's largest or second largest financial centre. It's massively bigger as a financial centre than other centres within the EU. I mean, it's massively bigger. So bearing that in mind, the Europeans have no choice but to use London. And personally, I don't think that will be a great difficulty. The thing, of course, is Remainers, the people who think leaving the EU is a disaster, will continue to pick away at weaknesses that they think they can perceive. But of course, they regard the whole thing, the whole process of leaving the European Union, as something akin to a catastrophe. So there's no appeasing them.
Now, obviously, the big thing for Australia here is that it sort of paves the way for us to get our own deal done with the UK. I know particularly red meat exporters are looking at the UK as a massive opportunity. This a good thing for Australia?
It is a good thing for Australia because if the UK had not been able to reach an agreement on trade with the EU, then the particularly sheep meat, but beef as well, which is produced in the UK but depends very heavily on the EU market, would have been pretty much unsaleable in the EU because of the massive EU tariffs. I mean, something like 60% tariffs. So they wouldn't have been able to sell their sheep meat and their beef. And therefore, they would be desperately trying to sell it within the British market. And what does all that mean? That all means that it would be nigh impossible for us to negotiate a high-quality free trade agreement with the UK. So this does provide a very real opportunity for us now to proceed quickly with a free trade agreement with the UK. And as I've explained to people, including very recently in the UK, you can't have a free trade agreement with Australia if you exclude agriculture. And if you include agriculture, you're definitely including beef and sheep meat, red meat. You must absolutely include that. So I think we will get an agreement, and I think we will get substantial improvements in our access to the British market for beef and sheep meat.
Now, Alexander Downer, just quickly, because I am conscious that the Vic Health update will be in a moment. In terms of agriculture, obviously China has really targeted our commodities. Interesting article this morning in the Sydney Morning Herald, China's foreign minister reporting as saying he'd kick the ball to Australia, the hopes the relationship can get back on track. Is this a olive branch?
Well, his language is much more polite and measured than the language of some of his ambassadors and the spokespeople of the foreign ministry, but the message is the same, that Australia has to, a kind of patronising message that Australia has to improve its behaviour. So I think it would be a mistake to overinterpret his remarks. I don't think they do constitute better language, but they don't constitute a change in China's position. And I think it's just going to take a good deal of time. I mean, I think this is sort of involves Kevin Rudd, so maybe he sees himself in some sort of role as a mediator. I don't think that's appropriate. I think the Australian government has to just be calm, just take things step by step, use the ambassador in Beijing and the DFAT staff gradually to rebuild the relationship if that's what China wants to do. But never forget, China in the last 2 or 3 years has become very aggressive, very arrogant in the way it's treated Australia. And Australia has been calm and measured in response, and that's what we should continue to be.
Yeah, well, I guess time will tell if they actually start picking up the phone to Australia as well. Obviously, Australia is exploring other trade opportunities, particularly looking at areas like India. I know for barley, we're also looking to ramp up our exports again to Saudi Arabia. Where do you think we should be looking with these alternate markets?
Well, you're quite right. Although, you know, barley that is used for malting and therefore goes into the alcohol industry won't have much of a market in Saudi Arabia. So that will be for animal feed, and you get a much lower price for that market. So I think for our barley exporters, they'll find markets in different parts of the world, but not necessarily at such a good price as they would have got in China for barley for malting. The government has spoken about building a relationship with India. India is a huge market. It is growing. It has a tradition of protectionism, so it's going to be very hard to negotiate a high-quality free trade agreement with India.